your front door. Remind me mountains far away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ian Westmoreland, and welcome to the global launch of Kintsugi Heroes podcast. It's been 30 years in the making, but I'm so excited about what we're going to show today and just the future of this project. I want to thank all of you for making time available in your busy schedules, especially at this time of year. Now, to those who heard the music, very Cat Stevens-like. The guy's name is Colin Lilly, and he's one of our Kintsugi heroes. He's famous worldwide, lives in Alice Springs, and he was on The Voice recently singing Father and Son, and a couple of the chairs turned around. So Colin's kindly offered Kintsugi Heroes free use to his songs, and that one called Broken, I just love. Just played it over and over again. Now, we've got people from all around the world here. So can everyone just put in the chat whereabouts in the world you are located, please? Okay, we've got Hawaii, Sydney, Australia, Melbourne, Australia, Philippines. G'day, Peter. New South Wales in Oz. G'day, Ben. Australia, Sydney. I think the Aussies are outranking. Sydney. Northeast Victoria. G'day, Pat. Don, my hero, West Pennant Hills in Sydney. Ulladulla. Now, that's probably strange to the non-Australians, but Ulladulla is a place down on the south coast of New South Wales. Beautiful area. Northern New South Wales, another beautiful area. In fact, all of the coast of New South Wales is really, really beautiful. Sydney, Randwick in Sydney. Sydney via Glasgow. Wow. Okay. Martin, one of our heroes. Awesome. So the agenda of what I covered today, I want to talk a little bit about Kintsugi, just to give some background. We're going to meet some of the amazing heroes who've already shared their story. I'm going to talk about the future. Okay. Back in August 1993, I had an idea. I love reading stories, people's stories. I loved it where they were talking about the challenges they'd faced, how they'd overcome those, and I found it inspiring. And it occurred to me that I'd love to see a book just containing stories of people who experienced all sorts of adversity, had overcome that, and the idea was to give hope and inspiration to others. And at that time, I certainly didn't have the self-confidence, I didn't have the time, or didn't have the money. So I actually documented what I thought should happen, and I wrote to 3 community leaders, and one of them was the well-known Australian entrepreneur Dick Smith, and he took the time to write back to me a handwritten note, which I've kept. And the handwritten note said, "Ian, this is a great idea," and then he added, "You do it." And it's for 30 years it sat there. And many of the people here would know that in 2018 I founded an organization called Mentoring Men, which provides, we train up volunteer men to support other men through a long-term one-to-one mentoring relationship. And that consumed huge amounts of my time. It was 7 days a week. But late last year, we had sufficient funds donated that I could step aside as a volunteer CEO, and there's now a dedicated team who run that organization. So that freed up some time, and I did a bit of reflection for a few months. And then about 6 or 7 months ago, I thought back to this idea that I had, and I decided I'm going to do this. I sort of got my wife Helen's blessing. She'd be shuddering if she heard this, but because she knows how once I start doing something, I just commit myself to it, and incredibly passionate about it. And then about 4 or 5 months ago, a good mate of mine, Mark Henderson, said, "I've got a name for your project." And he came up with this word I'd never heard of before, Kintsugi. And I checked it out. And the legend is there was a Japanese emperor who had some valuable pottery, not my $2 cup here, but it got damaged. It got cracked, it got chipped, got broken a bit. And he said to the craftsman, "Can you put it back together again so you can't see there was any damage?" And they couldn't do it. But they could put it back together again using a precious metal like gold. So when you look at this thing, it's now far more beautiful than what it was before. You can see it's been through a hard time, but it's far more valuable. And the metaphor is, of course, for people, as many of the people here, many of the heroes have been through really difficult life challenges, but they've come through that. And in terms of society, their ability to give back to the community, they're far more valuable to themselves in terms of resilience, but also to the people around them. So that's where the Kintsugi name came from. The process, and of course, in 1993, the idea was, well, I'll get write-ups and stories that be in a book, and the technology's changed over that time. And where it's finished up, and in many areas way outside my technical depth, but we have a recorded conversation with the hero, usually via Zoom. And we have all sorts of people stepping forward. And if there are people listening to this at some stage, got a story they'd like to share, just have a chat to me. So the conversation's recorded. It's then edited and published as audio, video, podcasts. And Aveline will cover this later, but if you look at our website, the first 5 podcasts are on there. And we've got an author, Paddy French in New Zealand, who takes a transcript of the conversations, and many of those conversations are going to be included in a book. So that's the overview. So I wanted to thank Paddy French and Patricia Waghorn for the roles they've played in helping us get to this part. But I want to especially mention Aveline, who came into my life about 4 or 5 months ago, and there was just something about her. I can't even remember the reason we were having a chat. May have been about mentoring men. I can't remember. And then it just occurred to me, look, she would be brilliant as doing the host. So Aveline's been a guide, a mentor. The bulk of what's happened here, she's put all the expertise in here, and she's put up with me through all of this process. And I sort of had a question here. I'm reluctant to ask the second one, but the first one, Aveline, why did you decide, and I know how busy you are, you've got kids, you've got an incredibly busy life, busy business life. Why did you choose to get involved in Kintsugi Heroes?
Thanks, Ian, and hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. And I'm not sure if anyone has actually listened to the first episode that has been published already early this morning. But in that, I interview Ian. It's a short 20-minute one, and he asked me this question, and I go into a bit more detail in there. But the short answer and summary is that it made me feel like I was giving back, and that it was aligned with my personal purpose. And it felt like life had delivered to me an opportunity that was in my remit, and it was something I needed to do, regardless of my busy life and everything else. So,
I did have a second question, but I'm not going to ask it, which is any regrets about the decision. I'm not going to ask that. Fantastic.
No.
I want to play, and some of you would have seen this, but a really good friend of mine, Chris Hyland, put together a 2-minute, we call it a MASH video, which just shares some components of just some of the conversations that have been had.
So here we are. It is another episode of Kintsugi Heroes. And I'm with Lena Papadopoulos. I'm here with Aaron Beatus, Gregory Smith, Ian Forrest Jones.
I did horrible, unspeakable things when I was in active addiction.
I spent 5 minutes on the floor in a fetal position.
I said goodbye to my wife on the bed. As I watched her go, I remember a little bit later looking into the eyes of my kids as I shared that news. And no heart survives that unchanged.
I just had this knowing that I wasn't supposed to die, and that there were things I was supposed to do in my life and people that I was supposed to help, and that I was meant to be here.
For the first time in a long time, there was some hope in my life. You know, when we talk about mental health, we just want to really sort of focus in on just sort of looking after ourselves. And if we need to sort of talk to people.
One of the things to realise that so many people break up from their partners, they're angry at them, realising that if we really do care about somebody, then we're happy to let them go.
That what's required, regardless of who we are, is a willingness to be open-minded and to be honest with ourselves. What I say and what I do need to be congruent.
I kept a hold of this commitment to, I've got to be better, I've got to be different. And so I committed myself to education.
So I started telling people, you know, both in my personal and my professional life, my truth.
If I want something to change, it has to start with me.
Hopefully that whets your appetite to find out more of these stories and many of the other ones that are there. Okay, I'd like to hand the baton over to Aveline.
Thanks, Ian. And I hope you enjoyed that little MASH video. There's a couple of heroes here who were on the video. And one of those I'm going to introduce and say hello to is John Milham. John, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Wow, I feel very, humble in this, incredible collection of heroes. So, yeah, thank you. It's wonderful to see you again, Ab.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise. So John's story has been published this morning live. And so we touted it as our first, but we actually published 4 all at once. So we've got a little intro episode between Ian and myself, which is kind of just talking a bit about the background of Kintsugi. And then we have 4 episodes and John's is number 1. We'll get into that in a minute. But first, I want to focus on you, John, and I've got a few questions for you.
Please.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to take part in Kintsugi and share your story?
That's sounds like an easy question, but it's really hard. Like, so many people here would know how hard it is to share of yourself in the bits that hurt, right? Or the bits that are black, or the bits that we're not proud of. And I just, on that little 2-minute snippet, I just felt aligned with every person who expressed that, and they shared something vulnerable. And I just realized I'm drawn, surviving, life and all its challenges and ups and downs has given me a desire that comes from, I'm not sure whether it comes from a place inside me that needs to put it out, or if it's a greater calling, who knows where it comes from, but it just comes from a sense that the wisdom that has been granted to me as a gift, it's my job, almost like my part of the hero's journey, to pass that wisdom on, not with expectations of somebody following or doing what I do, but just finding their own inspiration, whatever it takes. And I truly believe these are all seeds we plant for others to harvest at some point. That kind of sounds pretty grandiose, but that's it.
I love that. Yeah, it's part of your contribution to humanity and to your place in life.
Totally. And even more than that, I am compelled now to do this. This is my calling, and I'm so excited at this stage of my life to actually have a calling, right? I feel, that's also a gift, right? But I can't stop talking now, even though it's still hard.
Well, that was the next question, actually. Did you find it easy to share your story?
No. I found it, it's possible at the end of a long journey. There are times in my life I made recently, I wrote a little piece about basically confessing to the world about my lies. Right, I lied about who I was. I lied about how I felt. I lied about what I thought. I lied about who I valued, and I didn't mean them. Sometimes I didn't even recognize them as lies. But I totally understand now that in your truth is power, is connection, is love. And that has taken me every single one of my days to get to. So I feel like it's been a long, hard, certificate of achievement to get here.
Yes, I think we're all kind of listening to those words and going, yeah, we're on the same page there, John.
Yeah, I don't think I'm unique. I feel very, as I said, very humble in incredible company. People who are brave, inspire me, and there's certainly lots of inspiration in this page.
Absolutely. What positive impact would you like your story to make?
Yeah. See, that's so difficult, because I now understand everybody has to find their own story in the story of others, in the example. But I was reading some research recently I shared with Ian, just the idea that positive stories of achievement of other humans, people that you can connect or have some form of rapport with. The research is quite clear now that they actually do have not just an effect on our mindset, right, which lead us to some form of joy or some form of inspiration, if you will. They also, when they ring a bell, they also have an effect that leads to action. So I just love the fact that Harvard is now confirming my right to get on a stage and tell people about myself, right? And I can claim now that it's actually doing the community a service. But I honestly think if one person, if a few people out there take whatever element of what I'm sharing, and I'm hoping it's sensible in some way or useful, and then just do something with it, then I have no judgment as to what they need to do. I'm just glad that it's making an impact.
It's beautiful. And yes, I fully believe that that's definitely going to happen, John. And because that's the nature of telling story in the collective, in group. And even though it's one-on-one with me, but it's going out to the masses. And like you just said, the research has shown how healing that is, not just for you, but for the people that listen. So it's an ongoing cathartic process and the evolution of ourselves. It's lovely.
I love it. Yeah. And the art of storytelling, like, bring it back. Our storytellers can save the world. So I'm, hopefully I'm just a small part of that movement.
Well, I'm really grateful you are. I do have another question. How pivotal was the story that you shared and those events of your life? I'm not going to give it away for everyone here. They've got to listen to it. How much did that impact your life now and what you're doing now?
I would say it impacted me about the same as a telephone booth impacted Clark Kent, right? The transformation was incredible, right? So the bloke I now recognize was someone in the past. I have a lot of fondness for him, but he was a ratbag, and I have no time for him in my life anymore. I thank him for the contribution he made to get me here, but he's not part of where I want to be or who I want to be. In a way that almost like we remember fondly some of our childhood friends, but we don't bring them up, right? So transform, like, I'm a different person. There's no doubt about it, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I am like, and I touch on this in the podcast, but the events that I talk about, I would just do anything. I would, rub any lamp to get the wishes to make them go away. But I would not want any of some of the ripples of life that has come to me as a consequence of the worst thing. I would not want them to go away, because they have been so just another level of living. The relationships with my children, with my friends, with my community, just the opportunity to love service and to love people, like in a way that I would only, in my past persona, I would only scorn, right? And now I was just watching a nativity at church on Sunday, and I could not help but almost get a smile of just like that. It was almost painful because instead it was just so delightful to see people, being vulnerable and being, and just joy. So I don't know, I'm starting to get weird, but anyway, I hope that tells you, yes, it's a massive transformation. Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And John, your episode blew me away. It was the first one I recorded, and it's still, when Ian asked me, are there any episodes that, stood out for you? It's always the first, and yours is one. And I think I told him it was the last one I just recorded. So, and there's been 27 that I've done. So,
wow. I just want to say thank you. You made something that was quite raw. You made it very safe for me, and that is such a beautiful skill, and I'm so appreciative. And of course, Kintsugi Heroes, I love the concept, and I'm so excited to hear the stories of all the other heroes, and then to go on and hear the next 27 after that. So I feel amazingly and sort of kind of ridiculously privileged being number one, but someone's got to start, so I'll clean them. I'll start.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John. All right, now Ian has asked me to put up a poll. We all love a good poll, and I'm just going to launch this now on your screens. What is your preferred method of accessing the Kintsugi Heroes stories? We've got audio podcast, video podcast, ebook, or printed book. Multiple choice, so choose all that apply. 37% said audio podcast, 84% say video podcast, ebook 11%, and printed book 32%. Interesting. So Ian's going to love that data. I'll park that. And now I'm going to welcome my second hero, and that is Don Mathewson. How are you doing tonight, Don?
Yes, I'm doing well, Aveline. Thank you. And it's good to be here, and it's good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So for everyone's benefit, Don, you'll be able to listen to his story actually next week. Yours is going live next Wednesday, Don. So that'll give everyone a chance to listen to the hours worth of episodes that are there now, and listen to Don next week. So I'm going to ask you very similar questions that I asked John, and you probably figured that. So you've been playing in your mind how you're going to answer. So how about we start with the first one? Why did you decide to take part in Kintsugi Heroes?
I wish I'd heard John Millam's answers before to think about it a bit more. But look, someone whose opinion I value and someone I respect asked me to do this. Now, I in no way fit this scenario of being a hero of any kind, in my view, in my mind. But sometimes you've got to rely on others' perspectives and what they think of you, and you may not even recognise that in yourself. Things that others know about you that we don't know. So I suppose that's all I can say about that. But when I started to look at what the Kintsugi Heroes was, that sense, and John touched on this, the sense of brokenness and the sense of healing and that comes, and how does that happen? It's a great metaphor for real life, in my view. It's fabulous. Many of us do experience brokenness and will continue to experience challenges and brokenness in our life. It's not a one-off event. But what I got out of this thing was, look, people who are compassionate, people who are caring, people who are professional come alongside you, and they help put the pot back together, restore it to wholeness again. But what I feel about this, and Jim, you know this because I talked about it with you yesterday, the scars do not disappear. They're still there, but they're not as bad as they were. But you're whole again. You're being held together, but those scars and whatever caused those scars will remain, I think, and help you be a better person as you deal with others having challenges and difficulties in their lives, because you have lived experience. And they serve as a reminder that, look, we are all vulnerable. And this is my big learning, that we are vulnerable. But to be a man and to be able to share, that is really important. But what happens once we are restored to wholeness, as best we can, we're not totally whole though, we have more resilience to face the challenges because we've been through them.
What a beautiful answer. And I'm not going to share your age. I've forgotten, because Don and I have the same ethos about not holding on to age. So we're not ageist at all. But I will give you a hint. He's lived a few years longer than me. So I've got a question. So, you know, when someone reaches that level of wholeness, so they've put their pieces back together again, Don, and feel whole again, and you, as you said, that they've got that greater level of resilience, is it then that sometimes life sends them another challenge, and then could it be potentially sometimes bigger than the one before?
Look, when you've had as many years around as I have, Aveline, we don't, as Ian knows, I don't tell people my age. I will if you ask me my philosophy of aging, but we're not going to do that. Look, and I'm just learning still about this. And I think being interviewed by you, it was a bit of a catalyst for me to think about life and the challenges, because even since then, challenges have come up. So they're going to happen in our life. And I think the key is that, you know, to be able to share those stories. And as you know, Aveline, I didn't think I feel like a fraud here today, and I did when I was being interviewed. But, you know, I've told a story, and I shared this with Jim yesterday. I've shared this story many times with humour, really. But when we were doing the podcast, the event, I stopped twice with tears in my eyes. I became emotional, and I don't know why. It was a big surprise to me. A story that I'd shared many times, more or less as humour, but deep down inside, that pain was being held in. And Aveline, with her giftedness in, and just her empathy, I don't know what it is exactly, but I just felt that I could share that easily and without embarrassment. That was a big learning for me. So I don't care now what I share. I'm going to share more about my life. Maybe not the deep, deep things that are there. Some things are always going to be held in and private, maybe. But if you can find a mentor that listen respectfully and without any sense of judgment, I think that's a gift.
Thank you for sharing all of that, Don. Yeah, I remember you said right up front, I feel like a fraud. I don't feel like I should be here. And then you got into your story and it was like, no, this is a good story and you absolutely should be here. And I love hearing that you're now ready to continue sharing that story and your stories, because it's so relevant, needed, and it's important for you to be authentic with yourself and those around you. You mentioned then about the easiness with which you shared the story. So can I ask you, was it easy to share the story with me?
Look, Aveline, it was until I hit the point where I stopped. My voice broke and I felt deep emotion. Now, what I told you in that story is nowhere near the worst thing in my life. It was only during the interview that I realised that I have a couple of other really difficult challenges that I've faced that they just brushed over in our interview because I wasn't properly prepared. I thought I was, giving you the story about my athletics and all of that stuff. So I've now realised that those other deep stories need to be shared as well. Good. And it wasn't hard. I think because of your giftedness and your empathy that even comes across online, that made an impact. I don't know why. I have no reason to know why I was able to share that and where the emotion came from, but it was there, and I'm glad that I was able to be vulnerable on that point.
Thank you. I'm very honoured, and I'm glad too. What positive impact would you like to have for your story to have made on other people?
Look, again, I don't have much to offer here. I think some things you're not taught; they're just natural in your life, and sometimes you don't even know what impact you're having. I'd have to say, I hope this comes across in a humble way, but a lot of people say I'm an inspiration. Now, I never get that. What are you talking about? But people do say that. And I think, well, why is that? I'm me and I don't know all about myself, maybe. But look, I know that life is going to serve up more challenges for me, and it already has. But I think having someone to share with is, for me, an impact. And just yesterday with Jim, after our chat, this is another mentor online here, I felt uplifted and good, and I'm glad, and I was able to share that with others. And I just had a really good meeting, and that really was uplifting. So the impact, I think, for men in particular who are going through life challenges, and they have to learn to be vulnerable. I mean, I do too. I want to be Superman. I don't want to share anything about my problems or difficulties, but that's a learning since Kintsugi Heroes interview, that I'm learning now that I need to share more about those deep things in life. People who will listen to us, people who won't judge us, and people who are respectful when we're talking. So I think that's important. And I know that there are going to be more challenges, but there's more resilience with each challenge. But I do know this, that you get through things. I've been through things that I thought, I'm never going to get out of this. But every time there's been a solution, there's been a coming out of it to wholeness again. So that's what I hold on to. No matter what comes up, I do believe that there's I'm not solutions focused, but I believe I'll come out of this in a whole way again. And not to dwell on it, not to let the past define us, but to recognise those scars. And that broken pottery that's there is still going to be part of us. And I think that helps us. It helps us to be more authentic when we're sharing with others. That lived experience is vital.
Absolutely. I love that. I love it so much, Don. Thank you. I'm so pleased to hear the insight you got from our conversation, about you personally and how that's shifted your perspective on being able to share more. So hooray. I'm really pleased. Thank you. And thank you for coming and talking to everyone here. Like I said, Don's episode is dropping next Wednesday. I just want to share with you a little bit about what we've done. So the podcast launched today, and there are 4 episodes, like I mentioned, and they'll drop every Wednesday. I've done 27 conversations. We do have a fair few in the pipeline, and yes, so we've got all the major podcast directories hooked up, just waiting on Apple Podcasts to synchronize. We do have Spotify. So I would implore that you go and have a look, listen to one. And if you could help us by using your mobile, Spotify's got this thing where if you listen to just the first 10 minutes or a few minutes of the first episode, when you go in, the rating button will pop up and you just click on it, and then you can put in 5 stars. So you don't even have to listen to the whole episode. And the more ratings that we get in the early days, the better, obviously. But it would be lovely to have your feedback and have you check out the episodes when you get time. And the website also was launched yesterday. So that is there, kintsugiheroes.com.au. I think that's all I needed to share, but just thank you for coming. It's been a delight, and I'm going to hand back over to Ian.
Thanks, Av. And Don, you are an inspiration. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention, but Don has won, am I allowed to say this? Many gold medals in World Championships, middle distance running. So it is inspiration to me. So I just want to talk just briefly about the future plans. And 6 months ago when the project restarted, my thinking was, well, we'll have a few conversations, a few podcasts, and produce a book. And as said, my wife, Helen, and I, we're going to fund this, and we are funding this. But how things change, and it's been such an eye-opener for me, hearing the stories, a real learning curve. I've heard amazing stories, and the very first story, I was in tears hearing, as John Millam shared what he was going through. The stories are hard, but in every case, the stories I've seen so far, I felt uplifted. It gave me a hope and optimism at the end of it, and I want to grow that. So I've now got a dream. Famous quote. So I have a dream that which is going to I believe will leave a lasting legacy. I would love to get to a situation where anyone going through adversity, anyone going through a life challenge, can readily find a story that resonates with them personally, resonates with the life challenge they've got, and has a positive impact to them. And when you start to think of all the types of situations that people can be in, that's a large quantity of those. And I've also got this idea, instead of just having a generic book, I see things around themes. We're about to start a crowdfunding around addiction. And I suspect, like me, many people don't fully understand what does addiction really mean. And there's a famous quote from Princess Kate, who's an ambassador for this: no one sets out to be addicted. All they're trying to do is cover up some pain or whatever that's there. So I'd love to help get a story around addiction, around grief. The very first podcast was on grief, around abuse, around physical disability, mental disability, migrants, refugees, Indigenous. And Pat is on the call. I'm not sure. Actually, good day, Pat. Thank you for turning up. So Pat came into Kintsugi Heroes early on and put in a couple of grant submissions. And one of those was approved. The grant submission is for the Alpine area of Victoria. This is this beautiful area around Bright and Myrtleford, who went through the Black Summer bushfires. They've given a grant to a partner that we're working with to capture the stories of the men and women impacted by those bushfires. So there'll be conversations, there'll be podcasts, there'll be a book, there'll be community events, and we'll get the community actively involved and talking. And there's a well-known, well-regarded psychologist who's been supporting people in the Alpine area, a guy called Dr. Rob Gordon. And I spoke to him this week, and one of the things he said is that often the trauma events, people think, well, that trauma was 2 years ago, it's all okay. And other apparently unrelated trauma comes up 2 to 3 years later, but it directly was caused or indirectly caused by the traumatic event. So he's incredibly passionate about supporting us. He's going to be one of the heroes having the conversation with Aveline. And I guess to me, just reinforce the importance of what we're doing. So my passion is to keep growing the number of stories, sow hope and inspiration. And I've also added in there education. The Ians of this world, who, like 6 months ago, who didn't understand many of these issues that people face. Whatever social media or whatever that you access, please like and follow us or promote what we're doing. So I have mentioned the website. We're active on Facebook. We're active on LinkedIn, Instagram. There's the podcast page there. There's a YouTube channel. And if what we're saying resonates with you, if you'd like to contribute to helping get more stories out there, then please think about donating. You can donate via the website. There's a donate page. As I said, the crowdfunding campaign will start. We're just waiting for the official charity registration to come through. I actually got an email from them today saying they'll complete that within the next 15 days. Did anyone here on the Zoom meeting want to make any comments or ask any questions?
Unless, just in case, I got to thank you, Ian and Aveline, for putting this on. I think it's fascinating. I did know what Kintsugi meant. When I combined that with Ian Moreland, it was a no-brainer.
John, thank you so much for turning up and the encouragement.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. I just want to acknowledge how much goes into something like this and what an amazing job you're doing and how much love and heart and care has gone into this, and just everyone who's participated and opened up and shared. And, you know, I just want to acknowledge there's so many moving parts to this. And I just thank you for giving of yourselves in this way.
Thank you, Tracy. Your episode has gone live this morning. So everyone, Dr. Tracy Potter's episode is number 4, and it's really amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, and I also wanted to acknowledge that I think a long time ago I was in like different communities where there was a lot of raw, we call it being raw authentic, like verbal sharing of, I mean, I'm comfortable, I can get in front of a room of a lot of people and tell something really vulnerable and cry in front of people. And if it weirds them out, then that's kind of their thing. So it wasn't telling the story that was hard. I really wanted to do a good job because I wanted it to serve people. So I was really focused on how can this serve others? And I forgot that it could serve me. Like it didn't even cross my mind that the experience of doing that was going to help me. And it did. I felt like a huge weight had been taken off when I told that particular story. I told piecemeal to different people, but I had never in this kind of format told the whole thing stem to stern like that. And it was so cathartic and it was so healing. I felt heard. Thank you, Eveline, for your compassion and care and sensitivity. And I felt heard and understood. And something happened that, you know, I couldn't get justice in an obvious way. And I felt very violated by negligence that really harmed my health in a severe way. And I just, I created such a feeling of helplessness and violation, and just being able to like speak it out like that in that much detail and have some emotion about it. And just, I don't know, I just felt like this huge weight was lifted off, and that was an unexpected positive side effect of participating. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. So glad to hear. It's really special.
Thank you again, and looking forward to ongoing encouragement and support. So thank you, everyone.